The military raids undertaken by the Muslims were minor until this point. They had been more exploratory than anything else, but they had served to initiate Muslims into the conduct of warfare. It was the Battle of Badr, however, that was a milestone for Islam as the first decisive battle between the Muslims and the Quraysh. The Prophet, peace be upon him, rode to Dhul Ashira, attempting to intercept a trade caravan from Makkah to Syria. The caravan, however, managed to flee to Syria. The Prophet, peace be upon him, then dispatched 2 men to Hawra in Syria to await the caravan's return. When the scouts spotted the caravan approaching, they hurried back to Medina to inform the Prophet, peace be upon him. Once the Prophet, peace be upon him, heard that the caravan was returning, he mustered between 313 and 317 men, 2 horses and 70 camels. He then headed for Badr, about 155 kilometers southwest of Medina. The Prophet, peace be upon him, awarded the white standard to Mus'ab bin Umair. The Muhajirin were given a separate standard, which was carried by Ali bin Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, while the standard of the Ansar was borne by Sa'd bin Mu'adh, may Allah be pleased with them all. Badr, ringed by high mountains, was accessible through 3 routes. One called Al-Udwat al-Qaswa lay in the south, the second called Al-Udwat al-Dunya approached from the north, and the third approached from the east and was used by the people of Medina as the main thoroughfare to the settlement of Badr. There were some houses, wells and orchards in Badr, and for this reason Meccan caravans heading for Syria travelled along it and generally broke their journey there, staying anywhere from a few hours to a few days. It would have been simple for the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his men to seize the caravan by blockading all 3 escape routes. Success depended on the element of surprise, however, and the Muslims would have to appear only after the caravan pulled into Badr and seal off all 3 routes before the Quraysh could react. Accordingly, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his men left Medina, heading in the opposite direction from Badr. Once the Prophet, peace be upon him, was at a safe distance away from Medina, he changed routes and headed directly for Badr. The caravan that the Muslims hoped to seize was headed by Abu Sufyan bin Harb. It consisted of 40 men, 1,000 camels, and goods worth 50,000 dinars. Abu Sufyan was highly cautious, and he asked every person he met about the movement of the Muslims. He was at a great distance from Badr when he found out that a large band of Muslims had left Medina. Acting quickly, he turned the caravan westward and headed for the coast, bypassing Badr altogether. Moreover, he sent a messenger to Makkah requesting reinforcements. When the Quraysh received Abu Sufyan's message, they quickly rounded up a squadron of 1,300 men to confront the Muslims and protect the caravan. All the notable chiefs of Makkah, except for Abu Lahab, joined the force, as well as every man from each of the neighbouring tribes. Of the Meccan clans, only Banu Aday refused to take part. When the pagan army reached Jufa, they received a message from Abu Sufyan informing them that the caravan was safe and that the army should return to Makkah. The men were preparing to return when Abu Jahl arrogantly refused to retreat. Only the men from the Banu Zahra returned on the advice of their chief, Akhnas bin Sharik Thaqafi. The rest of the troops, now numbering 1,000, continued their journey. Upon reaching Udwa Qasmi, the Quraysh set up their camp in a spacious field just behind the mountains that surrounded Badr. The Prophet, peace be upon him, learnt that the Quraysh were approaching Badr, and he met with his men to discuss their options. Abu Bakr and Umar, may Allah be pleased with them both gave their opinions, and Miqdad bin Amr voiced the prevailing sentiment. O Prophet, peace be upon him, we will not say what the children of Israel said to Musa. You and your Lord go fight, and we will sit here. Quran 5:24. We will fight along with you, on your left and on your right, in front of you and behind you. Miqdad's words gladdened the Prophet, peace be upon him, with their sincerity, for he had worried the Ansar would fight in defence only if they were attacked in Medina. After all, the second pledge of Aqaba did not call for the Ansar to fight alongside the Prophet, peace be upon him, outside the city. The Prophet, peace be upon him, then asked the men if they all agreed. Sa'd bin Mu'adh, the chieftain of the Ansar, said, O Prophet, I swear by the one who has sent you with the truth, that if you plunge into the sea, we will also plunge in with you, and not a single man among us will lag behind. We will not hesitate if you dash against the enemies, for we are firm in war and bold in the fray. Lead us, and may Allah bless us and our mission." At this, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "I bring you glad tidings from Allah. He has promised me either booty from the caravan or victory on the battlefield. By Allah, there is a vision before me of a battlefield, and I see the exact places where each man will fall." Resolutely, the Prophet, peace be upon him, led his men onward to Badr, and they arrived there the same night as the Quraysh. The Muslims set up camp at al-Udwat al-Dunya, but al-Hubab ibn al-Mundir advised the Prophet, peace be upon him, that they should move ahead and encamp at the well, nearest the enemy, so that they could store water in reservoirs. He also suggested that the rest of the wells be filled up, so that the Quraysh would have no water. The Prophet, peace be upon him, took Hubab's brilliant advice and carried out his instructions. The Muslims then made a small enclosure of palm branches in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, would stay while directing his men during the battle. A group of Ansar youths were put under the command of Sa'd bin Mu'adh to act as lookouts. After this, the Prophet, peace be upon him, walked around Badr with his men, saying, "This is the spot where so-and-so will fall in battle tomorrow, God willing." He passed the night in prayer at the foot of a tree, while a gentle rain fell and lulled the men into a refreshing sleep. Allah recounts his favour to the believers in the following verse. "Remember how Allah enveloped you with drowsiness to make you feel safe. He caused rain to descend upon you from heaven so you could clean yourselves. Rain that also removed Satan's influence, strengthened your hearts, and made you stand firm in battle." Quran 8:11. The next morning, Friday, Ramadan 17-2 AH, the two armies came face to face. "O Allah, here come the Quraysh in their vanity and arrogance," the Prophet, peace be upon him, supplicated. "They deny you and call your Prophet a liar. O Allah, fulfill your promise to me. Help us, Allah." The Prophet, peace be upon him, assembled his men and told them not to begin fighting until he ordered them to do so. "Use arrows only when they come close, and don't draw your swords until they are very near." Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, then escorted the Prophet to the small enclosure where the Prophet, peace be upon him, began to pray to his Lord. "O Allah, if this group is destroyed today, you will not be worshipped forever. O Allah, if it is your consent that after this day you will not be worshipped forever." Abu Jahl also prayed, "O God, destroy today the party that seeks to break filial ties and believes in wrongdoing. O Allah, help the party today which is much loved by you." Challenge to single combat. The Quraysh's three best horsemen, Utbah bin Rabi'ah, Shaybah bin Rabi'ah, and Walid bin Utbah, stepped forward and challenged the Muslims to single combat. In response, three members of the Ansar came forward, but the challengers were thirsty for the blood of the Meccan exiles and said, "We want our cousins." The Ansar withdrew, and Ubaidah bin Harith, Hamza, and Ali, may Allah be pleased with them, came forward. Hamza faced Shaybah, Ali stood before Walid, and Ubaidah accepted Utbah's challenge. Hamza and Ali both killed their opponents with ease, but Ubaidah and Utbah had wounded one another, and neither had the upper hand. Ali and Hamza ran to Ubaidah's aid and killed his opponent, and then brought Ubaidah, who had lost his leg, back to their ranks. Later, he died of this injury at Safra'ah on the way back to Medina. The Battle of Badr begins. The Quraysh, smarted at having lost 3 men before the battle had even begun, they charged at the Muslims, who, encouraged by their early success, faced the onslaught without flinching. Proclaiming Allah's oneness, the Muslims cried out, "Ahad, Ahad, one, one." The Prophet, peace be upon him, who was given an insight into the supernatural allies sent to him, turned to Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, and said, "Rejoice, O Abu Bakr, Allah's help has come. This is Jibreel, moving ahead with his horse's bridle in his hand. His garments are besmeared with dirt and dust. Allah's help came in the form of 1,000 angels. The Prophet, peace be upon him, then marched forward toward the fray, and at that moment the following verse was revealed. Soon will their multitude be put to flight, and they will show their backs. Quran 54:45. The Prophet, peace be upon him, took a handful of dust and threw it at the Quraysh, saying, "Let their faces be disfigured." The dust flew into the eyes and noses of the Quraysh, as mentioned in the following verse. It was not you who threw, but Allah. Quran 8:17. The Prophet, peace be upon him, ordered his men to attack, crying out, "Rise!" The Muslims, outnumbered 3-1, were inspired when they saw that the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself was present among them and ready to fight. Supported by the invisible army of angels, the Muslims swarmed over the Quraysh. The Quraysh fell one after another, and soon they retreated in disarray. The Muslims followed in pursuit, slaying some and capturing others. Satan, who was also present in the guise of Suraqa bin Malik bin Jushum, saw the army of angels and escaped by plunging into the Red Sea. As befitting a general, Abu Jahl was well protected during the battle by men carrying swords and spears. He was so well guarded, no Muslim could even get near him. A young boy told Abdul Rahman bin Auf, "Show me Abu Jahl." Abdul Rahman replied, "What have you to do with him?" "I have been told that he vilifies the Prophet, peace be upon him. By the one in whose hand my life lies, I shall kill him when I see him, or shall be killed by him." Another young boy told Abdul Rahman the same thing. Suddenly, Abdul Rahman spotted Abu Jahl on the battlefield and pointed him out to the two young boys. They attacked him fiercely with their swords, and Abu Jahl fell to the earth. After the battle, they both presented themselves before the Prophet, peace be upon him, each claiming to have killed Abu Jahl. He looked at their swords and proclaimed, "Both of you have killed him." The young boys were Mu'adh ibn Afra and Mu'adh ibn Amr. The first is said to have been martyred in the same battle, but Mu'adh ibn Amr remained alive till the caliphate of Uthman, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, gave him Abu Jahl's belongings. Abdullah bin Masud, who found Abu Jahl dying on the battlefield, placed his leg on his old enemy's neck and caught hold of his beard to behead him. "Hasn't Allah disgraced you, O enemy of Allah?" Even as he lay dying, Abu Jahl was unrepentant. "For what have I been disgraced? Is there anybody above the man you have killed? I only wish that someone other than a farmer had killed me. Tell me, who was victorious today?" "Allah and his messenger, peace be upon him," Abdullah said. "O herdsman, you have mounted a very difficult place," Abu Jahl responded. Abdullah then cut his head off and placed it before the Prophet, peace be upon him. "Allah is the greatest, all praise is due to Allah," the Prophet, peace be upon him, cried. "He has proven his promise to be true, helped his servants, and defeated the opposing army." Gazing at Abu Jahl's head before him, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "He was the pharaoh of this nation." With Abu Jahl's death, the Quraysh were humbled. They scattered, defeated by an army of men and angels, and thus ended the Battle of Badr. It was fought not for territory, riches, or honour, but to make belief in Allah victorious over unbelief. The Muslims fought against their fathers, uncles, sons, brothers, cousins, and friends. Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, killed his maternal uncle, Asib bin Hisham, while Abu Bakr faced his son, Abdul Rahman, and the Prophet, peace be upon him's uncle, Abbas, was captured. Utbah bin Rabi'ah, who was one of the first three to challenge the Muslims in a preliminary duel, fought against his son, Abu Hudayfa, one of the Prophet, peace be upon him's closest companions. Blood ties were severed so that belief would prevail over unbelief. The day came to be called Yawm al-Furqan, the day of distinction, because on this day the battle lines were drawn, not according to tribe, but according to belief in Allah. 14 Muslims were honoured with martyrdom during the Battle of Badr, 6 Muhajirin and 8 Ansar. They were buried at Badr, and their grave sites are still known today. On the pagan side, 70 men were slain and an equal number taken captive. Most of the dead were tribal notables and chieftains. In fact, the bodies of 24 pagan chieftains were thrown into a foul-smelling well. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and his men stayed in Badr for 3 days. When he was about to begin the journey back to Medina, he stood over the well and called out to each chieftain by name. "O son of so-and-so, do you wish you had obeyed Allah and his messenger? I have found that what my Lord promised to me is true. Did you find your Lord's promise true?" "O Prophet, peace be upon him," Umar asked, "how can you talk to bodies which have no souls?" "They hear me just as you do, but they cannot answer," the Prophet, peace be upon him, explained. The pagans who had escaped carried the news of their defeat back to Makkah. The Makkans were crushed and disgraced. Unwilling to give the Muslims still in Makkah a chance to see them grieve, they prohibited mourning over their dead and captured. Refraining from mourning, however, would not be easy. For example, Aswad bin Muttalib lost 3 sons at Badr, and he desperately wanted to lament for his dead sons. One night he heard a woman weeping uncontrollably, and he assumed that mourning had been permitted. He immediately sent a slave to find out if it was so. He found out that mourning was still banned. The woman was crying for her lost camel. When he learned this, he raged. "She cries because her camel is lost, and restlessness has disrupted her sleep. Cry not over the camel, but over Badr, where fortune fell on an evil day." The Prophet, peace be upon him, sent 2 messengers to announce the victory to the people of Medina. Abdullah bin Ruqayyah went to northern Medina, while Zayd bin Haritha went to southern Medina. The people of Medina had been worried, especially because the Jews had spread rumours that the mighty Quraysh had overpowered the Muslims. When the Prophet's messengers arrived, the people shouted, "Allahu Akbar, Allah is most great." The Muslims were jubilant. Allah had given them victory, and they were serene in their belief that Allah would reward those Muslims who fell in battle. While the Muslims were heading back to Medina, the Prophet, peace be upon him, received a revelation from Allah concerning the distribution of the spoils of war. 1/5 of the booty was set aside for the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the rest was to be distributed among those who fought in the battle. He became the first prophet who was allowed to share in the spoils of war. Allah also ordained that Nadir bin Harith be executed, and Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, beheaded him. Later, the command to kill Utbah bin Abu Mu'ayt was given, and Asim bin Thabit Ansari beheaded him, but some sources indicate that it was Ali bin Abi Talib who slew him. Upon hearing the news of the great victory, many of the citizens from Medina travelled towards Badr in hopes of being the first to congratulate the Prophet, peace be upon him. They met the victorious Muslims in Ruqayyah and accompanied them back to Medina. The sight of the triumphant Muslims entering Medina with dozens of captives led many people to become Muslim. After reaching Medina, the Prophet, peace be upon him, held consultations regarding the prisoners of war. Abu Bakr said that they should let the Quraysh buy their freedom, while Umar was in favour of executing all of them. The Prophet, peace be upon him, decided to set them free in return for a ransom, which ranged from 1,000 to 4,000 dinars. Those who could not pay and were literate were required to teach 10 Muslim children each by way of ransom. Those unable to do either were set free anyway. A poignant sidelight of this battle was the capture and subsequent ransom of Abul As, the Prophet, peace be upon him's son-in-law. Zainab, may Allah be pleased with her, the Prophet, peace be upon him's daughter, who was the wife of Abul As, was still in Makkah, and she sent a necklace to ransom her husband. The Prophet, peace be upon him, recognized the necklace. He himself had given it to his daughter as a wedding gift. his eyes filled with tears, and he sought the consent of his companions to free Abu al-As without ransom. The companions agreed, and Abu al-As was freed on the condition that he would let Zainab migrate to Medina. After he returned to Makkah, Zainab was allowed to join her father in Medina. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, left for the Battle of Badr, his daughter Ruqayyah, may Allah be pleased with her, was ill. The Prophet, peace be upon him, asked Uthman, her husband, to stay in Medina to attend to his sick wife. He would get the same reward the Prophet, peace be upon him, promised him, and an equal share of the booty as those who fought at Badr. Usama bin Zayd was asked to stay in Medina for the same reason. Unfortunately, Ruqayyah, may Allah be pleased with her, died before the Prophet, peace be upon him, returned. Usama bin Zayd said, "The news of the victory came to us after we had already buried Ruqayyah." Later, the Prophet, peace be upon him, gave his daughter Kulthoom, may Allah be pleased with her, in marriage to the bereaved Uthman. Because he was married to two of the Prophet, peace be upon him's daughters in succession, Uthman came to be called Dhul Nurain, one who has two lights. Kulthoom died while married to Uthman in the month of Shaban 9 AH and was buried next to the Prophet, peace be upon him's mosque in the cemetery known as Baqi.